Well, let's get into the your wonderful experience in general terms with the entertainment industry and what you did as part of it, as far as writing some Sherlock Holmes scripts.
Here in Hollywood, there's a thing called the trade papers. Now, the trade papers are probably more international than they used to be, but at that time, I'm looking at right around around 75. The big trade papers in those days is Hollywood Reporter and Variety, and they were the organ of the entertainment business with news, with jobs, with rentals, all these different things that were just really essential to people in the business to learn about where the work was and what was happening. And I always read the classifieds because the classifieds were where you might find writing ads. You might find ads for jobs for screenwriters or for people who had writing opportunities of different kinds. And I had done work in radio as well, and there were also syndicated TV and odds and ends. So I came across, I just did this regularly, and one day I came across an ad for a production company that was looking for people to write scripts for a new Sherlock Holmes radio theater. Well, I had done radio. I had done a lot of radio drama and comedy, and also done some stuff for TV here and there. So I went in and I pitched in and I said, yeah, I'd like to do to come in and do this. And I presented what I had, and they said, well, we'd like a writing sample from you to see if you've got the chops to do it. And I submitted a writing sample and I got asked back. And so after this, that, and the other, they said, okay, well, we're a signatory to the Writers Guild of America. If you get accepted and your script gets bought, you have to join. You have to pay the fees to join, and you'll have to do all that. And I said, no problem. So after one thing led to another, they gave me an assignment to write a script on approval, which meant that if they approved the script, that is, they reserved the right, that then if they bought it, then I would be, of course, paid for the script, and I'd have to join the Writers Guild. So the script they assigned me was one of the 5 most revered Sherlock Holmes stories called Silver Blaze. And it's an astonishing story. I won't go into all the details, but I was just blown away because I'm a total Sherlock Holmes freak. It was one of the things I really drove me to pursue this and to go out of my way to get it. And so I wrote the script. I turned it in, and I think I had to wait a week to find out what the disposition was. But they came back and said they were just delighted with the script. They were really happy, and they made arrangements to pay the fee and also to arrange for me to get into the Writers Guild of America. And I didn't really wake up to it that overnight I had become, at 27 years old, a member of the Screenwriters Union. And I didn't really realize the implications of it. But the show was produced, and it was really well received. But all of a sudden, I was going to events and meeting really accomplished people. And it wasn't long before I had a writing partner who was older than me and experienced, and we began getting jobs together in consulting. And I started moving into a whole new universe. And my life was really starting to take off.
You talked about your work with interactive media. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I will say that our attitude toward interactive media is schizophrenic at worst or best. We talk about web pages and we talk about web space. That's where the problem starts. We don't really know what we think about the World Wide Web. I taught interactive media writing for close to 10 years, formally at UCLA, USC Cinema TV, American Film Institute, Stanford, and about 5 other universities, including Cal State Northridge, for a semester, where I ended up with 2 sections. That is a 45, I ended up with 90 students in the full session, the real university session. And the reason for that was the professor they had before me was so awful all the graduate students refused to take his course. He was waiting for someone to be hired who could teach a course. So I ended up with it. But it's interactive media is it's a really toxic sort of thing in the sense that one of the things I've said in speeches before, and I'll say here for you to relate to any way you like, is that it's a gift. It's a gift with dark overtones. In the year 2007, the iPhone debuted and Facebook debuted at the same time. And what all of a sudden you have now overnight is you have people carrying a powerful computer in their pocket, and you have the number one mirror technology in that device. And when I say a mirror technology, is that Facebook is a device that allows people to create a profile of themselves. And so they write a profile of themselves. Who are you? Oh, my name is Michael Utvich. This is my whole life story. It's a mirror image of me. I get to see that, and other people can visit me electronically in my little mirror image. So I ask you the question, who is the person who visits Michael Utvich's profile more than anybody else? It's me. Who is the person who visits your profile on Facebook more than anybody else? It's you. So the whole lie of Facebook is that other people visit your profile more than you do. They don't. It's everybody looking at their own profile. And that's the gag behind Facebook. It's like, come on, people. So here, all of a sudden, after 2007, all of a sudden you start seeing pictures of people sitting on a wall, 10 of them, with an iPhone in their hand, staring at the iPhone and not at each other. The story of complete cyber isolation has begun, where people are looking at their iPhone, looking at their own profile, going, has anybody visited my page? Cyber isolation has now launched, and it's on its way, and it is not stopped today. Wake up, people.
Wow. Well, that's quite a review.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just saying people, what social media has given us the monkey in the White House. Take a look at what it gave you. And it's not going to get better with AI either. Look at how it distorted the whole field of what people believe. And people are just looking at themselves. That's all it is. It's this mirroring freak out device. I mean, I'll tell you a story of why I got off of Facebook. I had friends calling me and saying there was a whole episode whereby somebody hijacked my little thing, the device on my Facebook profile, the chat feature, and they were calling people in my Facebook list and saying, hi, this is Michael. I've been kidnapped and I'm in London, and I'm going to be killed if you don't send $75 by Western Union to this address. And they called at least 10 people in my list. They're saying, this is Michael. I'm held hostage in London by these people, and if you don't send this money, I'm going to get killed. Blah blah blah. And they're using the chat feature to call these people up. And I know at least 3 of them wanted to go and send the money. And then they made the mistake of sending it to this French guy I know, who was a hardcore tech expert. And oh God, he said, it's the Russians. It's the Russian mafia doing this thing. So he called up Facebook and said, shut down this account. And they shut my account down. And it was like, but they literally, and the Facebook people, when I contacted them, they said, oh, that's just the money scam.
Wow.
They knew what it was. They didn't do anything about it, but it was just like the money scam. That's what the Russians do.
How long have you been a member?
Well, I joined the Writers Guild in 1977. So do the math. How long ago is that? That's,
Almost 50 years.
yeah, well, 77. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it would be 50 years. And it's I mean, just having friendships and connections and people and events, I mean, the reason that I got my book contract is directly due to the Writers Guild and being at an event there and meeting the gentleman there who referred me. Just
Now, you must be asked or have been asked to write scripts too.
yeah, I did a lot. I did a lot of work in radio and some TV there, but it's the once I started, once I did the first book in New York, that sort of hijacked me. I mean, I started writing books, and I also did a lot of corporate media. I did a lot of corporate films and corporate entertainment media and promotional and marketing material. Because frankly, in Hollywood, the business of writing entertainment was, was sort of like an alpine climb. I mean, either, if you're going to write features, that was a whole deal. Feature films, you had to have a really good network, and you had to have getting the financing, getting all that done. It was a really challenging thing. And getting into series television also was highly political, and getting yourself lined up for that. And I was willing to give it a try, but I had a lot of other opportunities to write for money that were a lot closer. And because I had succeeded in writing books really fast, and so those opportunities were a lot closer.
Great. Talking about technology, how has artificial intelligence, the technology, helped a creative person?
I've experimented with AI somewhat. I mean, I use there's a variety of different ways. I have had Perplexity. I think it's Perplexity. I've used that. I have a friend of mine in Germany who's a really great expert on this, and so we go back and forth and try different querying methods and stuff. I've signed up with a provider called Poe, and Poe is connected to one of my favorite websites of all time called Quora. Now, Quora is a very unique website. A lot of people may not know about it, but Quora.com is a social network that is based on questions. And so when you go to Quora, you can search for questions of interest to you. And many times the question may not exist or it may exist. And you go to the question, and there will be a structure there that you can see how the question has been answered, and the different answers that have been built around the question. And it's a fascinating website because when I was doing research on books, Quora was one of the ways I could literally create what I call an expert network. Because you'd go to a question and you'd see all the people who had answered the question, and you had an expert network already built for you. Because here's all these experts who've answered the question, and there they are all lined up for you. And it's absolutely unique. Nobody else does this but Quora. And Quora created Poe. And Poe is a whole structured access network to AI. And so I'm signed up, and I go into Poe, and I can choose just about any one of the bots and use them and try them I can even try the same query on any one of 3 or 4 bots and see how they all differentiate and deal with it. I'm 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 a little on the wary side with AI because I'm not sure. I mean, I notice that a lot of the responses I get, from, ChatGPT or different bots, look an awful lot like recycled human writing, to be honest. I mean, I don't fundamentally believe, to be honest, that AI can write that well. I think what AI is doing is repurposing or recombining material it's getting from somewhere else. So that's what a lot of it looks like, is recombinant or reanalyzing or repackaging. Like if I ask it a question on health, which I have a number of times because I'm in my 70s, and I'd say, well, what I get back looks like sort of a goulash of medical websites. Do you follow me?
Yes.
And so I'm going, well, okay, AI did not write that. What AI did was an analytic lasso and sort of stewed the goose and came back and gave me with the results. So I'll be candid. I don't trust AI.
Okay.
Not really. I really don't. I'm open to some things about it. I've gotten some good responses from it, but I just don't know. I've read a book a while ago by, I think the author's name was Eric Larson, and the book was called The Myth of Artificial Intelligence. And he went all the way back to Alan Turing, to where it all started, to where Alan Turing said, okay, this is how we're going to build the system that's going to unpack the Nazis' decodes and everything, and we're going to decrypt the whole thing and figure it out. And he takes it right from there. And he shows you how the process has been unwired and everything. So yeah, I try to keep an intelligent view of what it is. And I hold my trust in reserve. I'll put it that way.
What are some of the most memorable books you've helped create?
Well, the Ventura book always was one of my favorites. And then I wrote a number of different books, which I would say were technical books, mostly for the money. And I won't pinpoint that. One of my favorites was, the Arts and Letters book. It's a software package. It was an extraordinarily creative software package, which was it was favorite to many people around the world. And I basically went and found it, and I hustled my publisher to do the book on it. And they agreed to do it, even though it was very low market comparatively. But I said, if we did an official book, we would own that market. And in fact, we did. And they sold tons of books because there was no competition. Mine was the only book there, and they made a lot of money. The other one we did, which is a little wild story, but my partner, my editor, and I wanted to do a comedy book, a satire on the biggest trade show at that time called Comdex. Now, Comdex was a big, ugly trade show that took place in Las Vegas, and it was a small city full of big, ugly trade show booths, and you had to probably walk about 10 miles to get through it. And so I said, well, I'd like to do a satire on Comdex. And I'm a pretty good comedy writer because I had done written for some stand-ups at the Comedy Store, and some of my, it's another story about how I met my writing partner in comedy. But I said to my Random House partner, why don't we do a satire on Comdex? And we called it the Guerrilla Guide to High-Tech Trade Shows. And in some ways, it's my favorite of all the books because it was just viciously funny. And, it just made fun of absolutely everything about trade shows. We made fun of the booths. We made fun of all the crazy people and the types of people who go to trade shows. And it was just a scream, the whole thing, the whole experience. And people bought it. They sold it in trade show bookstores, all this thing. And I still have it. I still get requests for it. And it was just hysterical. I mean, I even got in somehow and gave a copy to the president of Comdex, which was a singular moment, let me tell you. But it was just fun to be able to do something that outrageous. And that book made money for us. But the other thing was it got us deals to write 4 separate trade show columns over the next 5 years. So we made a lot of money on that.
In a previous conversation we had with you, you mentioned your work in the automotive industry.
Yeah, I got recruited. I mean, yeah, I guess, Michael, I can say once you do one crazy thing, you can do another, so you go from there. But yeah, I got recruited by someone who knew me from the tech world to come in, and there was a big deal. Ford Motor they had like this huge printed course that was, all the books of the course were like 9 feet long on a shelf, and they never used it. And they said, what we want to do is translate this printed resource and make it into a classroom course. We can bring people in and teach them, and to teach our dealers how to run a service department. And so we have to take everything in this course and turn it into a teachable course so we can make better dealers and everything. And so I think they hired about 25 instructional designers in town here in LA to do this writing. And I got pulled in and I wrote a big module, a big inventory module. I had files of stuff here that was just printed, messy stuff, and turned it all into instructional material, which I knew how to do, and turned it in. And there was a local company that was running this business. And all of a sudden, I had a big credit in automotive. And the next thing I knew, I was being hired to go in and work at Nissan. Nissan was down the way. There was another company that was working in Nissan. And so I worked at Nissan for about 4 or 5 years doing various things. They had various operations in the dealers, help the dealers perform better. And then they had different operations to help the home office perform better. And then they had another initiative they called the Nissan Way, which was, well, how do we make Nissan think differently and improve their output? And so every time it was, you go in and you develop the consulting work and you develop the steps and the format, and you go and do presentations. I would develop the initiatives, and then we would all go around the country. There were 9 different Nissan depots around the country, and introduce the work and present it and talk about it and do all this. And then next thing, I ended up at Toyota and did the same thing, all this kind of stuff. And I ended up working at all the offshore manufacturers, Toyota, Nissan. I worked with Honda, and then also the Koreans as well.
Wow.
Just
Well, with your very interesting career and all the different things you've done for different people in different industries, what recent developments or trends do you see today?
well, everybody's talking about AI. Well, like you go on LinkedIn and everybody's talking about AI all the time, like it's some sort of a narcotic and like it's going to take over the world. And I frankly would find that to be really horrific. I think that, we've got accelerating media everywhere, and media is sort of swallowing everything up. What I hope is that people out there are really have trust in themselves and are really ready to learn, develop their own skills at um, observing, knowing, and taking responsibility for themselves. I used to do presentations for people on writing, and, people would say, well, what is a writer? A lot of people think a writer is a guy who sits at a word processor and types words or writes things on a piece of paper. And I said, that's only what the actual physical writing only happens at the end. What a writer is a professional observer. This is important that kids understand this. A writer is a professional observer. A writer is a person who pays attention to what he or she sees and sees beyond the surface. And when you see beyond the surface, you draw conclusions about what you see. And then you write about what you see. You write about what you see under the surface. That's what reporters do. That's what people who go in and work in a company do. You go look at a company and you say, okay, where are these people screwing up? Why are they not as efficient as they should be? You're a professional observer and you see why. That's been my job for all these years. I pay attention. I go in, I see, and I report it back. And I think that's why I find the AI thing so dispiriting, because AI, I think, essentially just churns out, sys out, but it is not a professional observer. It's sort of a pre-coded piece of manure that is basically set up to give out predetermined answers. And I don't think that's going to get people anywhere.
One of the interesting and intriguing aspect is that you have interacted with the Hollywood crowd for many years based on the kind of what you do. What have you learned from that interaction population and the networks that you've had there?
Well, I'm involved with the Writers Guild and at various times, a lot. And the Writers Guild is really focused on the people who, they tend to be more serious in terms of the people who've just committed to develop scripts and entertainment. And I visited some of these really senior writers at their home, and I actually was a volunteer to produce the writers' retreat up in Arrowhead, and some of these amazing writers we had. Our president of our union would come up, and just the name of that legendary writer who was the guy who wrote North by Northwest. He was our president at one time, and he wrote just about every major film. And he was the president of the year that I was the head of the Arrowhead Conference.
Was that Ernest Lehman?
Ernest Lehman. Yeah,
Yes.
That's what it was. Ernest Lehman wrote huge movies. His credit list is unparalleled. And I got to know him, and I invited him to be the keynote at our retreat up in Arrowhead. But he wrote big movies like Hello, Dolly, and he wrote this North by Northwest, and he had stories he could tell you forever about just all the ins and outs of what it was like to just. What impressed me the most about the people I met and talked to creatively, the writer people, the few of the actor people, is how much of Hollywood is just so many of these great moments just happen because people put pure hard will into it, and how many of these things just happen on the very thinnest gossamer. They just hang on just purest accident or moments, that it's a miracle a lot of these things even come through, because there's so many variables in force that people have to will them to exist. And all the different forces in play against things working on. I think of just how many movies are made where they just reshoot and reshoot and reshoot and reshoot, and how much the business just grinds things out of people. A lot of people just sacrifice themselves for it. So it's a very difficult universe, and a lot of people are really give a lot of themselves for it. And what I take away from that is just that the glamour part of it is really, really overestimated. But at the same time, it's just one of those things when you say to people, why are you doing all this? And the answer you get back is, I could not do anything else. I could not do anything else. This is.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us on this podcast with our featured guest, Michael Utvich of Epsilon International. My name is Mike Miller of MVP Investment Solutions. We believe the future of small businesses includes owning commercial real estate. Our mission is to remove barriers to provide access to commercial real estate investments, making it possible for small business owners to generate passive income while building wealth.